again, this is
Okay, I'm recording. Today is Sunday, November 17th. It's noon, corresponding to Tes Zion, Cheshvan.
okay.
Okay, and we're here. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, wait, so what the subject was what? My mother? I forget her.
The subject is family memories, anything you can think of. Tell us about the family. Tell us about what you remember from extent aunts, uncles, your own memories growing up. Um, Share. The floor is open. General
Oh,
things, specific things.
um, so in our home there. Hi, Lippy.
Hi. And
Hi.
we want to say Mazel Tov for your Moshe's daughter for the bat mitzvah.
Ah,
It was
the
Thursday night.
yeah, right. Right. There was a strong, your mother agreed with this. We both talked about it once, and she and I both said there was a feeling of stability in the home, of stability. And, you know, it, it was a very good atmosphere. My parents loved each other and respected each other very, very much. And every word that was spoken, every action that was taken, uh, was for the good of the family. I never remember them arguing. And maybe it had, sometimes different opinions, but they would talk it out. And so some specific things. And should I wait till you get back?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, okay, I remember when
Anything.
today,
Addresses, where you lived, how many, the apartment, anything.
well, no, no, let me tell you something more meaningful. Like today, we're afraid of Iran. What's Iran and the nuclear problem? When I was a kid, when I was young, around 10 or so, remember there was the danger of Russia, fighting against the United States and perhaps, would send an atomic bomb or some kind of bomb that would, hurt us very much. And in school, there were exercises from time to time, to go down to a safe place where the children would go down to a safe place, down the stairs in the basement or something. And I remember asking my mother, what will happen to us if Russia does, hit us with a bomb? And she looked at me and she said, whatever will happen to the Jewish people will happen to us. And it I found that answer very, very reassuring. And then I stopped worrying as much as I did before. But her answer was very, very reassuring.
Around how old were you at that time?
That's probably 12, 13, something like that. I was old enough to be aware of, you know, the big things that are happening in the world, and but I was still young. And what else? Um, and so I remember people would come in, asking for tzedakah or organizations. Rabbi Barkin was one of them, and other people. And and my father was always generous, and would never send anyone away empty-handed. Remember that. And there was my father loved the music, and I remember him playing the guitar. and he loved Yiddish songs, and also songs from South America that he had picked up when he was living there before he came to Chicago. And what else?
Did he, that was, he had records, there was the radio, both.
Yeah, yeah, there was there was the radio, yeah. And I took violin lessons, and my parents offered me piano lessons. I took piano lessons for about 3 years, once a week. Aiji learned the violin. Today he plays the not the guitar, but uh
And I think your father played.
the mandolin. Yeah, my father played. I remember my father playing the mandolin. Right, right. Um, what else? Um, when we announced to my mother after my father was gone already, but when Herschel and I announced to my mother that we want to make Aliyah, in many cases, parents were shocked and were against it. How can you go so far away? We'll never see the grandchildren. But right away, my mother gave me her blessing. She gave us her blessing and helped us, somewhat financially at the beginning. And then she used to come every 2 years. She would come and stay for 2-3 months.
Hmm.
So that was wonderful. Um, so uh, when I was young, I mean, it was around. I remember 7, 8 years old, and years after that, my father would take us places in the summer. That was either to the zoo or or whatever. But we would go on trips, 1-day trips, and I remember that fondly. And I remember the shul, the Machziki Adas, especially on Yontif. Uh, Rabbi Mednick. Do you remember him? No, he was before Rabbi Goldman.
Okay.
He was the rabbi before Rabbi Goldman. Of course, he had learned in a Lithuanian yeshiva in Europe, and I remember his Rebbitzin, who was fond of me, and I have pleasant memories from that shul and the West Side. We lived on Kildare.
You lived on Kildare.
Yeah. First, when I was born, we lived on Spalding
Hmm.
and the west side, near Roosevelt Road, and then we moved further west, near Austin on Kildare Avenue, also near Roosevelt Road, and
Do you remember the number on Kildare?
1238. I
Is that
remember
is that south?
1238. Yeah, South Kildare.
South Kildare.
Roosevelt Road was 12th Street. Was
Okay.
12 South. Madison was like the dividing point. North of Madison was north. South of Madison was south. Yeah. What else? I remember we used to once every few weeks we would go. My father would take us, and we would visit my Aunt Goldie on the south side in Hyde Park. My mother's sister, Goldie.
Goldie
Um,
and Abe
Goldie,
Spector.
Goldie Spector. Right, right, right. We would go about once a month. We would go. It was a long trip, but I remember very clearly going. And sometimes in the summer, they would send me there for a few days, for a week or so, like for a summer vacation.
How close
Because
are you in age with Evie?
9 months apart. She's 9 months older than me. She's
So,
9 months older than me.
so you were you
Yeah,
close as
so
cousins? You had
we we were when I was there, yeah, we did things together. We were friends. We were friends, yeah. But there was a big distance. So other than those visits, or maybe a family wedding or something, I didn't see her. I didn't see her. At one time, we were students together at Roosevelt University for one semester. Years later,
mhm.
and she she married her husband like just a few months after we got married. We were married in March, and she was married in July, I think, the same year. The same year. Um. So, uh, I yeah, okay. There were also when I was little, and sometimes my father would take us over in the evenings, summer evenings, to Garfield Park, just to be in the park. And there was one time when both your mother and Aiji tried to scare me there. I don't know, pretending that there's something there behind that tree or something. Um, but your mother and I didn't do that much together. There was, a 9-year difference between us, and she was like in another world, high school, and then she met your father already. She was already 15, and I was much younger. So I remember growing up more with Aiji. It's interesting. But later on, when we were both married, in the second and third year of my marriage to her, so then we lived near you. You lived on Kimball, and we lived on Spalding. It was nearby, and there we like solidified our relationship. And since then, we were always very close.
Okay. Where in all you were Spalding in Albany Park or
What? When what?
in Hollywood Park?
When
You said when you what you just mentioned that when you were first married, or
in Hollywood Park. Hollywood Park. You were in Kimball, and we were a few blocks away on Spalding,
near Bryn Mawr.
near Bryn Mawr, right near Bryn Mawr. Right, right. Yeah. So we lived there for 2 years, and after that, we moved to Pittsburgh. Herschel got a postdoctorate in Pittsburgh for 2 years at Carnegie Tech. Today it has a different name.
Carnegie
And
Mellon, I think.
yeah, right, right, right. And in Pittsburgh, we actually davened in the Lubavitch Shul. What
Hmm.
was the rabbi's name? He was in Chicago, and then he moved to Pittsburgh.
Rabbi
Uh,
Posner.
who?
Rabbi Posner.
Posner. Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, right. Um, what else?
You went to the day school,
I went to the parochial school.
parochial
Sure,
school.
sure, sure.
You
Uh,
started kindergarten or preschool.
yeah, I started kindergarten at the parochial school. The kindergarten was in the Rosh Shul on Douglas Boulevard, like across the street, almost across the street, kitty corner from the yeshiva and from the JPI. The JPI, you know what the JPI is? The Jewish People's Institute. That's where my parents met. They went to English class to learn English in the evening. It's mamash across the street from the yeshiva on Douglas Boulevard.
Okay.
They met there, and I remember the boulevard very, very well. I had a good friend that I'm still friendly with today, who lived on the boulevard, and that was very beautiful. And then it turned into Independence Boulevard. It like curved into Independence Boulevard where the parochial school was. And also around that curve was Hashomer Hadati. It later became Bnei Akiva. First, it was called Hashomer Hadati. And remember, your mother, I was about 9 or so, and one Shabbat, your mother took me there. I remember going with her. We walked into Hashomer Hadati, and Rav Shvimmer, Rav Shvimmer, you've heard of him? Yeah, Rav Shvimmer was speaking. He was a brilliant man. Um, uh, uh, Also, eventually, he and many others moved from Chicago, from the Bnei Kiva crowd, moved to Israel in the 50s. They moved to Israel in the 50s, and then eventually he taught at the Michlala, at Rabbi Kopperman's Michlala.
He lived
But
in
anyway,
Chicago.
what?
He
Rabbi
lived in
Kopperman,
Chicago.
what?
Schwimmer, Rabbi Schwimmer
Shimmer was
lived.
from Chicago, and he had a brother who what so I don't remember his name, but Rabbi Schwimmer was eventually taught at the academy. So he was my teacher for a year in Chumash, I think. Chumash or Navi, Chumash. I respected him very, very much. Anyway, I, I remember your mother taking me into Shomer Hadati on the old west side, and Rabbi Schwimmer was speaking, and he was speaking about Eretz Yisrael and how important it is, to go there. And that's where I got the bug. That's where I got the bug. I remember it very clearly.
This sounds like it was after Hakamat HaMedina, after independence.
Because in 48 I was only 6 years old. I was only 6 years old. It was in the early 50s or yeah,
Hmm.
somewhere around there. Yeah. Um, anyway, many years later, this same Rav Schwimmer, who was teaching at the Michlala, hired Tzipi to teach there. And so he brought her in to teach there, and she taught there for a year, and then she quit because she had twins, and she had a girl a year older than the twins. So there were three children, the oldest one being a year old. You know, they were born like close proximity. So and yeah, he appreciated Sippy.
And she was still very young at the time.
Yeah, right. She was married what about three years and something like that. Yeah, right, right. Um, and I remember myself going to Bnei Kiva, which was also on Independence Boulevard in the Old West Side. I remember walking there from Kildare Avenue every Shabbat, and it was very important to me. It was essentially Bnei Akiva that brought us to Israel. Tzvi also went to Bnei Akiva in Montreal.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And Camp Moshava. Did you didn't go? You probably went to Lubavitch camps, but Camp
Nechama
Moshe
went.
Nechama went. It was a wonderful experience. It changed my life in a way. The first time I went to Camp Moshava, I was 11 and a half. I came back a different person. Started davening. I was just much more conscious everything. There were just such wonderful people there, leaders, a Rosh Moshava, and here the first Rosh Moshava was a Rav by the name of Tzvi Kleiman, who was a brother-in-law of Rav Lichtenstein from the yeshiva Har Etzion in Bush, and uh, and many years later, he also lived near my neighborhood where I live now, and he taught. He was in charge of the English department at Machon Meir, which is a yeshiva for like foreigners, like anybody who for people who speak English, Spanish, French, Russian. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. They they make a lot of people from. It's a wonderful place. It's a few minutes from my house here.
It's a few
I
doors from.
daven there. I always daven there on Yom Kippur.
Oh, okay. It's a few doors from Rehov
Um,
Kasevsky in Yerushalayim.
wait. One more thing. Wait. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. One more thing, because I'm not hearing your voice so clear. One more thing. I remember the day that World War II ended. I came down from our house on Spalding. We were living on Spalding. It was 1945, and people were dancing in the streets. People were dancing in the streets because that day, World War II was declared over officially. I remember that. And there was all kinds of ethnic groups dancing. There were a lot of Italians who lived in the neighborhood. There were some blacks, Jewish people. Everybody was dancing. Yeah, it was a big day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And another thing, yeah. And I remember also when we lived on Spalding Avenue, walking with my mother on the main street on Roosevelt Road, and there was on the corner of Roosevelt and Main Street, Kedzie. So there was a man who sold potato chips, and then there was the intersection, and my mother and I were crossing the street, and there were streetcars, not buses. There were streetcars, and I fell. Like the streetcar was stopped for red light. My mother and I crossed, and I fell like right in front of the streetcar. I remember that. Evidently, I didn't get run over, thank God. But I have vivid memories of the West Side, and yet I was only like, let's see, I was only about 6 when we moved from there. But I remember it. I remember it.
Can you hear me?
Your voice is very low. Why? I don't know why. Wait, I'm going to turn up my sound.
Nechama, can you hear me well?
Oh, it's still low. It's still low. I don't know why.
I
Before
see
I
that you're
heard
muted, but
you.
you can hear me. Yeah, is your sound turned up?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Is Kildare considered the West?
I don't
Can
know
hear?
why. What? It is. It is.
Kildare considered the West Side?
Yeah. 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 It's along Roosevelt Road. Yeah. It's a little before Austin. Did you hear Austin? Austin, suburb of Chicago.
Oh, okay. Austin is a suburb.
Yeah, yeah. When I was older, when I was engaged, I taught Hebrew school at Rabbi Lehrfeld's shul, was in Austin.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you
Um,
Do you remember my father coming to your house?
Yes, I remember before they were married, I was playing in the living room in Kildare, and I remember your father coming in. Yeah. I remember your father coming in. And I remember their wedding very clearly.
What do you remember?
Well, I remember enough that when I became engaged to Herschel, I wanted to get married at the same place. And we did. And we did. It was the Sherman Hotel downtown.
The Sherman Hotel. Okay.
Yeah, downtown. Right. And uh,
Who was who did Seder Kiddushin for you for your wedding?
what, say it again.
Who was Misader Kiddushin at your chuppah?
At my chuppah, at our chuppah,
Yeah.
Rabbi Schusterman and Rabbi Goldman, both of them. And not that long ago, about a year ago, I met Rabbi Goldman's a granddaughter who lives in Efrat. I was visiting Efrat, and I met her. Yeah, that was nice. And yeah, I remember Rabbi Schusterman very, very well. For a
What you
while, I, you know, uh, I was in charge of like a small group of children on Shabbat at the shul and Shabbat afternoon. Um, but your mother was much more talented at that than me. You know, I have a good friend who I knew from a very young age. She also lived on Kildare Avenue, but further south, further south. Anyway, we went to the academy together, and she once told me that she was in your mother's group uh, in the shul. It must have been the Machzikia shul on the west side. And your mother was like terrific. You know, the way she handled the group and taught them, she thought the world of your mother. Today she lives in California, in Los Angeles.
I didn't know my mother did that.
Evidently she did, yeah. I yeah, I don't remember it either, but this is what my friend told me. Yeah, yeah. It was when we lived on Kildare. What else? Oh, um,
Chaya.
I remember my
Chaya.
favorite.
Okay.
Hi. Okay. Shalom, Neach.
Shalom, shalom.
Oh, hi everyone.
I
I
want,
was on my phone and I didn't know how to unmute it.
Hama, hi.
Chaya,
Hi.
Chaya, you told me a story about my someone that my mother met
Wait,
in high
try to
school.
talk louder. I don't know why, but my phone is I can barely hear you.
You
I'll
told me a
try to,
story about my mother with
yeah.
taking care of a new girl that came to school, to high school.
Ah, right,
Can you
right.
repeat that,
So
Terry, for everybody? Would you mind repeating that?
should I
Please
tell
repeat the
that
story.
story?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so there's the wonderful family living in Hebron, and the wife is from Chicago. Her name is Zelda. They're Zelda Horowitz, and some of their married children live in Hebron. An exceptional family. Anyway, so Zelda came to learn at the academy I guess, in ninth grade, her family lived on the south side, and a Rav there told her mother that she should send Hilda to the academy. So she shows up the first day of school, and she didn't know, she didn't know anyone who was studying there, any of the other students. She walks into the building on Wilcox on the west side before the academy moved to the north side. I'm talking about the west side. She walks in, and the first person she sees happens to be your mother. And she feels awkward, strange, not knowing anyone, not knowing where to go. And your mother sees her and sees that she's, doesn't know her way about. So she approaches her and asks her name and says, "Are you new?" And made her feel very, very welcome. And introduced her a little to the school. And that's the story. She told me this. I spent a few Shabbosim at her house in Hebron, and one of the times she told me this about your mother.
So is she my mother's age? Around?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Maybe, yeah. Maybe 2 years younger or something like that. Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
You also told me a story about you meeting Herschel, and that my father brought him home for Shalashudas. You tell that story
no,
also?
okay. No. Okay. Before I met him, before I ever laid eyes on him, he was living for a while in Hollywood Park. He was living in Hollywood Park.
By Mrs. Gordimer, right?
Right, by Mrs. Gordimer.
I think
exactly.
she was on Bernard, like, on the corner from us.
Right. And he
I remember he said he
to-
liked her salmon patties.
Right. Right. Okay, so he went to shul. Whose shul was it?
Lev Sameach.
Lev Sameach,
Who?
Rabbi Twersky.
Rabbi Twersky.
Who?
Lev Sameach, Rabbi Twersky.
Lev. No, it was
you tell me.
small. No, wait.
I think you
I
told
don't
me it
know,
was
he
Lev
went to the
Sameach.
shul there in Hollywood Park, and your father was davening there. It was it I don't know, maybe it was Leil Shabbat, or maybe it was for Sudat Shlishit, I think it was. Yeah, it was for Sudat Shlishit. Anyway, your father was there, and he invited him. He saw, a stranger in town. He invited him to his home, to your parents' home for Sudat Shlishit. So, so that's how Herschel came into your home on Kimball Avenue. So years, after we met, he told me how he was so impressed, especially with your mother. He just very, very much was impressed with her, in such a positive way. I thought she was such a fine person, a lovely person. Yeah, and what's interesting is that your mother told me around that time. Your mother, after we met, your mother told me that when she met Herschel, when he came to the house, she thought, the idea occurred to her, maybe she should introduce him to me. But in the end, she didn't. And we met, coincidentally, midei shamayim, you know, we met on our own. And
Did you meet at an
Yeah.
event or
what?
did you meet like at a wedding or at a party?
Yeah. No, well, the first time I saw him was at a Pol Mizrahi picnic in, I don't know, there was a big park in Hollywood Park, on Foster Avenue. There was a big
Gompers.
park there. It was
Samuel
like a get
Gompers.
together for singles. So
Eugene
I
Field.
saw him from a distance.
All the picnics were at Eugene Field on Foster.
What?
It's near
What?
Tells. All of those picnics were at Eugene Field on Foster, which is near Tells now.
Okay.
I'm just giving the details, but you could tell us the
Okay.
interesting part.
Why did you go there too, to a singles picnic?
No, but it's like nobody does it anymore, but they used to have picnics like to raise money. So I think they had for Beis Yaakov or every Crown, and everybody would pitch in and they would sell food like on picnic tables. And that's when people didn't have air conditioning, so they go to the park, you know, they go outside. Now people stay home and the air conditioning. But that was like a big thing then. Like today they do a barbecue, you know. So but all the groups had it, and there was always in Eugene Field.
Anyway, so it was the first time I saw Herschel was there. I saw him from a distance. I was very impressed with him. But you know, nothing happened there. And then about a week later, Aiji and I went to a wedding of a friend, and I saw him there standing nearby. We were waiting to, I don't know, to go into the dinner, and I just, without thinking, I walked up to him and I said, well, I think we have a mutual friend, which we did. And that's how it started. And then the next week we met at another wedding, and that was it.
Chaya, move your computer or whatever you're talking on, because we just see your forehead.
My phone.
Okay, so move it a little farther away from you so we can see your whole face.
Okay,
that's better. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that was a typical thing in those days, that people would meet at weddings, at things like that.
For people to meet at weddings, yeah.
You know, social events.
Oh, I have a granddaughter, Moshe's daughter. They live like near Shiloh in a place called Kida, and she's 21 and a half, and she would really like to meet someone. And there like aren't Eruim occasions to meet. So it's either shiduchim or online, which, you know, is not really so recommended, even though there are a few dati atarim.
Yeah, but it's a little risky because you don't know.
Right,
you know, people present themselves, and you don't really know who they are.
Careful.
But I like the speed dating idea. But I think in here in the modern Orthodox community, I think in the United States, I think in the modern Orthodox community, like people get introduced by friends, or they go like online by friends.
Friends, yeah.
Or like in the not West Side, Washington Heights, like they'll have like a lot of people for Shabbos, and they meet at the Shabbos table.
Yeah, that's another way, right.
It's all networking, of course.
Yeah. Right.
Now, who do you remember from school? Who do you remember from school, like the academy?
I'm still in touch. I'm still in touch with let's say with 4 people essentially from school. One one lived on Douglas Boulevard, and we WhatsApp every now and then, like, once every 2 weeks or so. And another friend lives in California. When I went to visit your parents there, I got in touch with her. We met. And two others are in Chicago. And two others are in Chicago. And
is it true that
it's nice. Also here in Israel, occasionally I meet, people from the past, from the far past.
One of your friends you said is goes to Deerfield Beach to my brother-in-law.
What?
One of the friends from Chicago you said goes to my brother-in-law in Deerfield Beach, young Israel.
Right. Yeah. Right. She has yeah, in the winter they go down to Florida and they go to shul by your brother-in-law. Right.
Can you also tell us, sorry.
Go ahead.
Could you also tell us, I think it'd be interesting how Herschel, when he was in Halifax or wherever, that the Lubavitcher rabbis would come up there, Rabbi Hendel would come up there, and how ended up going to Yeshiva in Montreal.
So, okay. And Herschel came with his family from Stettin in northern Germany. They were placed there after Tajikistan. They came, an aunt saw either in a list in shul or in the paper that they survived the war. So she right away sent them tickets to come to where she lived in Halifax. There was a few members of the family that lived in Halifax. So they got there in 48, I think. They reached Halifax in 48. And it was during the summer. And Herschel and his brother and sister was sent to a Jewish camp during the summer. And then they heard that a rabbi from the Chabad Yeshiva in Montreal, it wasn't Rabbi Hendel himself. It was, a rabbi who came to Halifax, maybe to find new students, maybe to raise money for the yeshiva. And Herschel heard about it. And because a Rav that taught him for his bar mitzvah while he was still in Europe told him, Herschel, when you get to Canada, he knew he was leaving. When you get to Canada, make sure to go to yeshiva. So when Herschel heard about this Rav from Montreal, he says, I'll go back with him. I want to go to the yeshiva. And that's how he got to the yeshiva in Montreal. And his teacher for the first year was Rav Hendel. And he always used to say, years later, he used to say to me, oh, that year he was he inspired me so much. The Torah that Rav Hendel taught me stayed with me for a lifetime. He used to say that. And not long ago, I was in Tzfat, and finally, I met the old Rav Hendel's son, who runs Chabad educational institutions in Tzfat. And it was, what was it? Sukkot or something. And my son-in-law, brought him out to me. So finally met him, and I told him that. And I told him that about his father and Herschel.
that he was
So
Herschel's
that was
teacher.
very
So
nice.
yeah,
He
of course, it's
seemed like
Isaac's
such a
grandfather.
lovely person, the son in Tzfat.
And I understand that Rabbi Stein, all the film, is also one of his teachers. He wanted to ask me about him.
Who?
Rabbi Stein.
That name I don't remember. That name I don't
I remember
remember.
once in Israel, he asked me about Rabbi Stein. So Rabbi Stein, my siblings know him.
Okay.
So
Okay. And yeah, this Reb Handel's no, he has a nephew who's also a Rav of a Chabad shul in Yerushalayim, in Baka. But younger, but I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, and
One of
obviously
one of
Isaac's grandfather.
uh-huh.
When
So
so Chaya, do you have any plans to come here to visit?
I'm thinking about like after Pesach. And uh I'm planning to come with a granddaughter because I have my balance isn't good and I'm just afraid to make the trip myself. So, and she wants to come anyway. So I'm thinking about after Pesach, we're after the winter when it won't be so cold. I do very much want to see IG and of course, to stop over to see you.
when did you leave Chicago?
Let's see, we were married in 62 and we were in Chicago for 3 years. So 63, 64, 60, and 65. We left
Before,
Chicago in 65
when
for
you were
Pittsburgh.
single, you stayed in Chicago?
Well, when I was about 18 and a half, I spent a year in New York. I lived with a friend and her mother who were moving there. So I spent a year in New York, and during that year, I taught at a Beit Yaakov school on Kingston Avenue, not far from 770. I taught Limudei Chol, and all the girls were from Bobov. They were all Bobov girls, and Rav Halberstam, the Rav of Bobov, his daughter was in my class too. She was like the leader of the class, the smartest one, and then in the evening, twice a week, I
Rav
went
Meir,
I went to Brooklyn College. What?
And was that Bis Yaakov Rav Meir?
It was Rabbi Levy, I think.
Yeah, so that I think it's one that was on Brooklyn and St. John's, it's now in
Right. Yeah.
it's now in
And you know who
Kensington. My daughter Connie taught there also they call it first grade.
Wow. And the principal, when I was there, the principal was somebody from Chicago. It was Millie Fassman. She was the daughter of Rabbi Fassman, who was the president of the Chicago Yeshiva.
Was that Oscar Fassman?
Yeah. His daughter. She was the principal of that Beit Yaakov at that time when I was there.
His name is still on the building of his shul. I just drove by last time I was there.
Wait, whose name? Whose name is still on the
Oscar
bill?
Fassman
Is on the name of which shul where?
on Tui or whatever
Tui.
Street.
I know what you mean.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And his wife would sub at Beis Yaakov.
Okay.
So when you went through the parochial school and the academy all the way? You never went to public school?
No, I never went to
Oh,
public
you're
schools.
fortunate, very fortunate.
Yeah, I know your mother was transferred
Mhm.
also in grammar school. She was at Lawson.
Right, right. She got
And then you
lost
know
in
who
and then
told her, about the parochial school? Mrs.
oh,
Shechet.
Mrs. Shechet.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Mrs.
yeah.
Who?
Shechet, Machli
Mrs.
Shechet
Shechet,
was one of Bubby's closest friends who
she was a
eventually moved to
landsman.
B'nai Brak.
She came from the
Oh,
same town as my mother. She came from the same town as my mother in Russia. So
Zaslav.
that's how they knew each other. Yeah. And of course, Mrs. Shechet
I didn't
organized
know that. Okay. They were friends. Yeah.
they would pack clothes for Israel. And when we were living in Sanhedrin Morchevet, every about twice a year, my mother would send, each time 6 packages of clothes for my kids, toys. We would gather around the bed, and it was a lot of fun for all the kids to open
That's
the
where I get it from.
packages. What?
That's where I get it from. Buying stuff for the kids.
Uh-huh. You do that too?
Yeah.
I remember
That's where
driving
you get
her
it from. Yeah.
in
You
our
sent to Bela? Where do you send?
No, I mean my kids. I always buy stuff for my kids. I'm like,
I remember driving Bubby in the station wagon with 6 boxes to the post office.
To the post office,
Yeah, I
yeah.
And
remember.
she didn't want me to carry it. It was too heavy. She wanted to
Yeah.
carry herself.
I
This is a cultural thing. Like times have changed so much. Nobody will wear. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, Mrs. Shechet told me the way
Yeah.
she distributed the clothes at that time in the 70s.
Yeah.
She made a store, and she would sell the clothes for like a few shekels. So
No,
people didn't
listen,
feel like they're getting a handout.
Nach-
They felt like they were able to.
listen to me. Mrs. Shechet and her husband lived in Bnei Brak at the foot of the Panovich
Yeshiva,
Yeshiva.
right?
Okay. And her house was the store. They
Right,
had
right.
like a 2-bedroom apartment, a living room, and all of the living room and the other bedroom, everything except her own bedroom was filled with clothes. I know because I visited there with sometimes with the children, sometimes without the children. Many times I was there, and the clothes were for a few shekel, for almost nothing, right? Full of clothes, and people came. It helped them out tremendously.
But nowadays, nobody would ever do that. Nobody would buy used clothes.
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean,
Well,
people they have here a lot of stores. I see like sometimes like some of these groups, people are asking, does everyone have clothes to give away? But generally, people. In Israel and here,
it's very in now, Nechama. It's very in to
go
to buy.
Yeah,
vintage,
second-hand shops. Like where my daughter Rachel lives, there's a boutique second-hand shop. Only really good
all
stuff.
the teenagers go to buy clothes at the what they call it.
But that's only designer then.
We have here 2 stores called Savers.
Yeah.
And they sell used stuff. Most of it is pretty new, in excellent condition. But someone once showed me they had a whole bunch. They had some Sfarim there, old Sfarim, that they bring in, and I went to save it from who knows who to buy it.
Yeah,
like old Gemaras.
Yeah. Here in Israel, there are a couple. I have a couple of calls coming in. Somebody's supposed to. My grandson is. You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandson is supposed to come over tonight with his wife, and he's calling now, and another grandson is calling. Yeah.
Bye.
So I
Thank you
better get
so,
going.
so much.
Okay, wonderful
Thank
to see
you.
you. Yeah, okay. Next week is Avi's Yortzeit, Chafvav, Chafvav,
Yeah.
Tuesday night and Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
4 years.
okay. All right. Wonderful talking to you.
Thanks so
Okay.
much. This is very good.
Well, okay. Choref Tov, Choref Tov.
Okay.
Tov
Thank you.
Tov.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Late road. Bye bye.
Thank you.